Think about your average Tuesday. You wake up, you check your phone, you sit in a chair for 8 hours doing something that would be completely invisible to anyone watching from a distance. Then you come home, sit in a different chair, and stare at a glowing rectangle until you fall asleep. Now ask yourself honestly, does that feel like what you were built for? Because the answer, buried in the fossil record and studied by anthropologists for decades, is stranger than you might expect. You were not built for Tuesday. For 99% of human history, your ancestors lived in a way so different from modern life that the two lifestyles barely share a recognizable shape. And yet you are them, your body is their body, your brain runs their software. When something feels wrong about the way you live, the restlessness, the boredom, the sense that you should be doing something more physical, more meaningful, more real, that feeling has a name, it has a cause. And it starts with a very simple question: what did ancient humans actually do all day? The answer is not what you have been picturing. Most people imagine prehistoric life as one long emergency, constant running, constant hiding, a brutal, terrifying scramble between predators and starvation. But that picture is wrong. It is dramatically, almost embarrassingly wrong. And the research that demolished it has been building for over 60 years. In the 1960s, anthropologist Marshall Solins introduced an idea that turned the field upside down. He called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society. Not because they had things, but because they did not need very many things to be satisfied. Solins had studied contemporary foraging groups, populations living the way your ancestors lived, and he found something that shocked him. They were not working all day. They were not grinding, surviving, desperately clinging to existence. The average hunter-gatherer, Solins calculated, spent roughly 3 to 5 hours per day on subsistence activities. Food, water, shelter, done. The rest of the day was theirs. 3 to 5 hours. Let that land for a second. Your ancestors, people without refrigerators, without grocery stores, without running water, were done with the equivalent of work by midday. And you, with all of your technology and efficiency and convenience, spend 8 to 10 hours doing something that mostly involves sitting still and moving your fingers. So what happened to the rest of those ancient hours? Anthropologist Kim Hill spent decades embedded with the Ache people of Paraguay, one of the last remaining foraging societies on Earth, documenting their daily lives in extraordinary detail. What he found was not chaos, it was not fear. It was something that looked, from a modern perspective, almost luxurious. Adults rested. They napped in the afternoon heat. They sat together and talked. They played with children. They groomed each other's hair, which, by the way, served a direct social bonding function, releasing oxytocin in much the same way that a long conversation with a close friend does for you right now. They told stories. They laughed. They made things with their hands. Tools, ornaments, objects with both practical and ritual meaning. The ancient human day was not a survival marathon, it was a social marathon, and this changes everything about how you understand your own restlessness. Because your brain was not built for efficiency, it was not shaped by evolution to sit alone in a quiet room and process abstract information for 8 hours. It was shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of a completely different kind of day. One full of movement, conversation, physical contact, shared meals eaten outside, the sound of other people nearby. Researcher Robin Dunbar at Oxford University spent years studying the social lives of primates and early humans, and he arrived at a number that became famous: 150. That is the approximate size of the social group the human brain was designed to manage, to know personally, to track emotionally, to maintain relationships with. Dunbar called it the cognitive limit of meaningful social connection, and in a foraging band you lived inside that number every day. You knew everyone knew you. There was no anonymity, no isolation, no such thing as eating alone. Now think about how many people you actually talk to in a week, face to face, out loud, not through a screen. Your ancient ancestor was not alone for a single hour. Movement was woven through every part of the day. Anthropologist Herman Pontzer has spent years studying the Hadza people of Tanzania, widely considered one of the closest living analogs to our Paleolithic ancestors, and he measured something that surprised even him. The Hadza walk, on average, between 5 and 8 miles every day, not as exercise, not as a goal, just as the natural result of living. Foraging requires movement, social connection requires movement, life required movement. And the human body, Pontzer found, was not built to be sedentary. It was built to move, and when it does not, systems that were designed to run on movement begin to malfunction. The chronic inflammation, the poor sleep, the anxiety that creeps in on days when you never leave the building. These are not weaknesses, they are your body correctly reporting that something is missing. But movement was only one layer of the ancient day. What ancient humans did with their minds is equally revealing. They made things constantly. The oldest known art, ochre engravings found in Blombos Cave in South Africa, dates to roughly 75,000 years ago. Beads made from shell were threaded into jewelry over 100,000 years ago. Flutes carved from bird bone were played in caves in Germany over 40,000 years ago. Your ancestors were not simply surviving, they were decorating, expressing, creating objects with no survival function whatsoever, purely because it gave them something that we might today call meaning. The hand needed to be doing something. The mind needed a problem that was visible, tactile, solvable. Anthropologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the researcher who defined the concept of flow, that state of deep absorption where time disappears and effort feels effortless, argued that humans evolved to enter this state through skilled physical work. Knapping a flint tool requires total attention. Weaving a net demands focus that silences everything else. The brain does not distinguish between the ancient satisfaction of shaping stone and the modern satisfaction of writing code or cooking a meal from scratch. The mechanism is the same. The reward is the same. What has changed is how rarely most modern lives offer it. And then there was the evening. Fire changed everything. The controlled use of fire began at least 400,000 years ago, and anthropologist Richard Wrangham at Harvard has argued, compellingly, that cooking with fire is what fundamentally separated us from every other primate. Cooked food is easier to digest, it releases more calories, it allowed the human gut to shrink and the human brain to grow. But fire did something else that is harder to measure. It extended the day. Before fire, darkness meant sleep. After fire, darkness became the most important social hours of your ancestors' lives. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner documented this in remarkable detail by studying the Zhuangzi San people of the Kalahari. During the day, she found conversations were mostly practical, food, work, problem-solving. But at night, around the fire, something shifted. Over 80% of nighttime conversation was dedicated to storytelling, myths, histories, characters, moral dilemmas worked out through narrative. The ancient campfire was the original cinema, the original classroom, the original therapy session. Your ancestors sat in a circle in the dark and they made sense of the world together by telling stories about it. That need to hear a story that makes sense of something confusing, to sit with others in the dark and feel the weight of meaning, has not left you. It never left. It is why you cannot stop listening to podcasts on your commute. It is why you will stay up past midnight to finish one more episode. It is why the right story, told the right way, still makes the hair on your arm stand up exactly as it did for the person sitting at that ancient fire, listening to the voice in the dark, feeling less alone. So here is what ancient humans actually did all day. They moved through the world on their own feet. They spent a few hours finding food together, talking the whole time. They rested without guilt. They made things with their hands. They laughed. They touched each other, shoulders, arms, hair, in the easy physical way of people who have never been told to keep their distance. They solved real problems with visible results. And when the sun went down, they gathered around a fire and told each other stories until the day dissolved into sleep. That was the day your body was built for, and the reason your Tuesday feels slightly wrong, slightly hollow, slightly too still, slightly too quiet, slightly too alone, is not because you are broken, it is because you are ancient, and the day around you is brand new.